Ma'am, this check is fake. People like you always try to scam us right before closing. But not today. The words, sharp and humiliating, cut through the marble lobby of First Union Bank like a blade. And in that single moment, every eye turned toward the black woman standing at the counter. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Comment, subscribe, and like so these justice stories reach more people. Now, let us step back into that moment, the moment when Dr. Angela Carter, a woman who had built a career on intelligence, innovation, and resilience, found herself being treated as if she were nothing more than a common criminal. Ethan Blake, the young teller who had spoken those words, did not whisper them quietly. He projected them with theatrical confidence, holding the $62,500 settlement check high above his head as if displaying a trophy of deceit. Customers shifted uncomfortably, some craning their necks, others smirking as though entertained by a show. Angela's hands rested calmly on the counter, but the whitened knuckles told the truth of her controlled anger. Then came the sound that would never be forgotten. Ethan tearing the check in half, slowly, deliberately, letting the paper rip echo off the polished walls. The fragments floated to the floor like broken promises. And in that moment, humiliation was not only personal, it was public. Angela remained still, her posture erect, her silence almost unnerving. A woman beside her gasped audibly, pulling her two young daughters closer, whispering something they would not soon forget. An elderly man in line shook his head, muttering the words, "some people," under his breath, words loaded with the weight of decades of prejudice. Behind the counter, Ethan smiled thinly, feeding on the power of his own performance. His colleague, Sarah, tried to hide her laughter behind a hand, while the security guard, Carl Donovan, stepped forward, his hand brushing against the holster on his belt as if reminding Angela who controlled the space. Yet Angela's eyes did not flinch. Her gaze was steady, calm, and rooted in something deeper than the insult of the moment. She had been underestimated before, dismissed before, and she knew the strength of waiting for the right time to speak. Then came Linda Harrington, the branch manager, striding from her glass office like a judge entering a courtroom. "What's the situation?" she asked. But her crossed arms and cold expression made clear her verdict had already been written. Ethan wasted no time, his voice dripping with conviction. "Classic fraud attempt. Settlement checks always come in late. This is exactly what scammers do." He gestured toward Angela as though she were a defendant on trial. The room's atmosphere shifted from curiosity to suspicion. Customers whispered. Phones were raised discreetly, and one woman, Maria Lopez, pressed record on her live stream. At first, only a handful of viewers joined, but within minutes her audience began to grow, as comments streamed in. "This is racism in real time. Get her a lawyer. This bank is finished." Angela, still silent, still calm, glanced briefly at her watch, a Rolex Datejust that glimmered under the fluorescent lights, a symbol of success completely ignored by those determined to see only fraud. Linda leaned closer, her voice sharp. 3 forms of identification, Social Security, and proof of address within 30 days. Angela reached into her Hermes bag and produced everything required. Neatly organized, perfectly valid. Linda examined each with exaggerated suspicion, holding them up to the light as though expecting hidden flaws. "These look very sophisticated," she declared loudly. "Criminals are getting better at fake IDs these days." Her words landed like a slap, and the live stream's comment count climbed steadily higher. Maria whispered into her phone. "They are tearing up her check, and now they are calling her IDs fake. This is happening live at First Union on Madison Avenue." Angela did not argue, did not plead. She simply watched, patient. As the stage was being set, Carl moved closer, positioning himself behind her, his bulk casting a shadow, his hand still grazing the equipment belt in a gesture designed to intimidate. The digital clock on the wall read 3:15 in the afternoon, 15 minutes until closing. Ethan picked up the torn pieces of the check and ripped them again, smaller now, as though shredding not just paper, but dignity. He lectured the room. You see, this is how they work. They come in right before closing hoping we'll rush. But not today. His arrogance painted the entire picture, and the silence of those around him gave him power. Yet Angela's silence was not weakness. It was strategy. She had learned long ago that the greatest response to ignorance was not anger, but preparation. She glanced at her phone as a reminder popped up. Board meeting, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Summit Technologies. The name alone carried weight, though no one in that lobby realized it yet. A first-class United Airlines boarding pass slipped slightly from her jacket pocket, evidence of a life lived far above the suspicion thrown her way. Still, no one noticed. All they saw was the story they wanted to believe. Linda reached for the phone on her desk, calling corporate fraud security as if announcing a crime to the world. Her voice boomed across the lobby. Yes, we have a potential fraud involving a suspicious settlement check. We are holding the customer now. Angela raised her chin slightly, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. Not a smile of amusement, not of surrender, but of quiet knowledge. Knowledge that every insult, every accusation, every false judgment was being documented, witnessed, and soon would be answered in a way none of them could imagine. Maria's live stream crossed 200 viewers, comments pouring in faster than she could read, and yet Angela stood as still as stone, her presence unshaken. She tapped her fingers once on the granite counter, a rhythm of patience, of control, of someone waiting for the exact second to reveal who she truly was. The lobby grew heavier with tension as Linda Harrington kept her hand firmly on the desk phone, her voice sharp, her words carrying across the marble floor. Corporate fraud security is on the line. This case matches the profile of organized settlement scams. We may need law enforcement. Customers shifted uneasily, some moving back, others leaning in with morbid curiosity, while Maria Lopez's livestream viewer count doubled again, the comments pouring in faster than she could keep up. Angela Carter remained silent, her back straight, her eyes calm. And it was that calmness that unnerved the staff more than anything, because in their minds, a guilty person should have been frantic, defensive, maybe even begging. But here stood a woman composed as if she were in control of a boardroom. Ethan Blake seized the moment to elevate himself, pulling out a laminated fraud prevention chart that he kept tucked under the counter, pointing to holograms and watermarks as though he were some kind of expert witness, saying loudly, "You see these? Too perfect. That's how you know it's counterfeit. Real checks have tiny irregularities. These criminals copy, but they can't imitate the flaws." His words, delivered with such false confidence, convinced only those who wanted to believe. Yet they added fuel to Linda's suspicions, and she nodded along as if Ethan's amateur theatrics were gospel. Angela's patience held, her lips sealed, though her fingers tapped once more against the counter, steady, deliberate, not the rhythm of nerves but the rhythm of timing. Carl Donovan, the security guard, chose this moment to step closer, shifting his posture from casual observer to silent enforcer. His body angled behind Angela in a way that cut off her escape route, his hand lingering on his belt, fingers brushing the handle of the taser clipped there, a subtle signal meant to intimidate. Customers noticed. A mother whispered to her teenage son, "Don't stare. Let's just wait quietly." But Maria's camera captured everything, and the comments lit up. "He's threatening her. Why is security blocking her exit? This is harassment, pure racism." Angela remained still, her head high, refusing to turn around or give Carl the satisfaction of acknowledgement. She knew the weight of intimidation. She had seen it in board negotiations. She had endured it in academic halls, and she understood that fear only grows when you feed it. Linda, feeding off Ethan's performance, demanded more documents, her voice rising with each request. Driver's license, social security card, utility bill from the last 30 days. Angela handed them over without hesitation. Each document pristine, legitimate, impossible to question. Yet Linda held them up to the light with exaggerated suspicion, shaking her head slowly, murmuring, "Very sophisticated fakes. I've seen this kind of forgery before." Her words, though baseless, were spoken with enough authority to sway those who didn't know better, and the whispers around the lobby thickened into assumptions. Angela's phone buzzed quietly on the counter, a calendar notification flashing briefly. Summit Technologies, board meeting, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Linda caught sight of the notification, her brows knitting together, but instead of letting it shift her assumptions, she scoffed, saying loudly, "Even their phones are rigged these days. Scammers set fake meetings to look legitimate." The live stream audience erupted with disbelief, comments scrolling across Maria's screen. "Unbelievable. She's dismissing real proof. They're blind to the truth." Ethan, emboldened, leaned forward with another jab. "Ma'am, you'd better admit this before it gets worse. Once we call the police, you'll be facing federal charges, attempted bank fraud, wire fraud, maybe even prison." His words carried the smugness of a man who thought he was delivering justice, yet his ignorance glared through every syllable. Angela breathed slowly, steady, and finally spoke, her first words since the ordeal began, her voice smooth but edged with steel. "Interesting timing." That was all she said, and the entire lobby felt the shift. Linda frowned. Ethan froze for half a second. Carl's hand twitched on his belt, and the customers exchanged glances, wondering why those two words carried so much weight. Angela then lifted her phone, pressed a button, and spoke with calm authority. "Natalie, execute Plan Delta. Yes, right now. Full implementation. Confirmed." Her tone was not the tone of a cornered woman, but of someone issuing instructions, decisive, absolute, and it unsettled everyone who heard it. Maria's live stream viewer count shot past 300, the comments exploding. "She's in charge of something. This woman knows more than she's saying. Something big is about to happen." Ethan, rattled, tried to regain his footing. "What kind of scammer has a plan? What are you talking about? Who are you even calling?" His voice cracked slightly, betraying the first signs of fear. Angela ended the call with a soft click, then placed the phone deliberately on the counter, her eyes meeting Linda's, steady, unwavering. Linda scoffed. "More games, more theatrics, but it won't work. Security has already flagged your name, and corporate will put you on fraud alert." Carl stepped even closer, his shadow now looming directly over Angela, his voice low but firm. "Ma'am, I need you to step outside for a private discussion." It was not a request. It was a command masked in politeness, the kind of tone that left no room for refusal. Angela did not move, did not flinch. She simply turned her head slightly, acknowledging Maria's phone camera with the faintest glance, as if to say, "Record this. Let the world see." The clock ticked to 3:20 in the afternoon, 10 minutes until closing. The tension in the air was almost unbearable, like the silence before a storm. Rebecca Kim, the Channel 9 journalist who had received tips from viewers, was racing through traffic to get to the bank, her van weaving through Madison Avenue with urgency, the newsroom buzzing behind her as producers monitored the growing live stream. Derek Johnson, the civil rights lawyer, had already logged in to watch, sending texts to his team, preparing statements, recognizing that what was unfolding was more than a customer service failure. It was a textbook case of institutional discrimination. Inside the bank. Linda raised her chin, her tone final. Corporate security has authorized us to freeze your account pending investigation. No transactions can be processed until verification is complete. That's 3 to 5 business days at minimum. She delivered the words like a sentence, as though slamming the gavel on a courtroom bench. The customers, now silent, watched Angela to see if she would finally break, if she would argue, cry, or plead. Instead, Angela smiled, small, controlled, enigmatic. That smile was the crack in the armor, the signal that something was not what it seemed. Linda's confidence wavered. Ethan's eyes darted nervously. Carl adjusted his stance. Angela's silence had been unnerving, but her smile was terrifying, because it belonged to someone who knew more than anyone else in the room. She tapped her fingers again, 3 times on the granite counter, then folded her hands neatly, her watch catching the light, her presence now commanding the room in a way no one could explain. Maria whispered into her phone for the benefit of the live stream audience. She knows something. She's not scared. Look at her smile. Something is about to change. The clock moved to 3:21 in the afternoon, the final minutes ticking down, the stage set for a revelation that would transform humiliation into reckoning, prejudice into panic, and silence into power. The silence in the lobby broke not with words, but with the steady ping of Maria Lopez's phone as her live stream surged past 500 viewers. The comments pouring in faster than her eyes could follow, people demanding names, demanding accountability, typing in all caps. This is racism in real time. Contact the NAACP now. Somebody tagged the news. And as the viewer count ticked toward 600, the atmosphere inside the bank shifted from a private humiliation to a public trial with an unseen jury watching from every corner of the country. Ethan Blake, still clutching the torn fragments of the check like they were evidence in a courtroom, raised his voice once more, trying to reclaim control. You can all see what's happening here. This woman brought in a fake settlement check, and when we challenged her, she refused to cooperate. Classic fraud. Don't be fooled by her calm act. His words, though loud, rang hollow, because the more he insisted, the more his voice trembled, and Maria's camera caught the subtle crack in his performance. Angela Carter remained poised, not speaking, not defending herself, simply standing tall as though she were waiting for everyone else to reveal who they truly were. Her silence more powerful than any argument. Linda Harrington, eager to prove her authority, stepped in beside Ethan and added her own verdict. We are following proper procedure. We cannot release any funds until corporate fraud security verifies everything. This woman is flagged. This is protocol. And yet her voice carried a shrill edge, the tone of someone aware that the ground beneath her was shifting. Carl Donovan, still looming, adjusted his stance again, his hand now firmly gripping his belt. And in that moment, the lobby no longer felt like a bank, but like an interrogation chamber. One woman against an institution determined to strip her dignity away. At that exact moment, Angela's phone lit up again with another notification, visible to everyone close enough to notice. Summit Technologies, board meeting, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Conference link confirmed. The live stream audience caught it. Maria whispered quickly into her phone. Her phone says Summit Technologies. That's a Fortune 500 company. Something isn't adding up. And the comments erupted. She's legit. They're harassing a corporate executive. This is going viral. The viewer count crossed 700, then 800. As shares multiplied across platforms, screenshots spreading like wildfire. Angela glanced once at the phone, silenced the buzz with a single tap. and folded her hands again. A portrait of patience, Ethan tried to counter, his voice rising as if louder volume would restore his control. Criminals study this stuff. They know the names of big companies. They fake alerts. Don't be fooled. This is a scam and I won't let her get away with it. His certainty, however, was betrayed by the beads of sweat forming along his hairline, the nervous shift of his feet, the defensiveness of a man no longer entirely convinced of his own story. Linda tried to bolster him. Exactly right. Sophisticated frauds use technology. It's all part of the trick. That's why we must remain vigilant. Her words landed flat, her audience inside the bank unconvinced, while the digital audience outside exploded with outrage. Rebecca Kim, the Channel 9 reporter, had just arrived outside, her camera crew rushing to set up as she was bombarded with tweets and direct messages pointing her toward Maria's feed. Inside, Maria's live stream crossed 1,000 viewers, the comments a flood of indignation. Call the local news. This needs to be on TV. I'm watching from Atlanta. This is disgusting. From Houston, we see you, sis. Stand strong. And I'm in Detroit. We won't let them bury this. Angela shifted slightly, her eyes moving to the television screen on the wall, still playing First Union Bank's promotional loop. Smiling families, diverse employees, the slogan scrolling across the bottom. Banking with dignity for everyone. The bitter irony did not go unnoticed by the viewers, who flooded Maria's comments with screenshots of the hypocrisy. Angela's lips curved into that faint, knowing smile again. And once more, Linda's confidence faltered, because nothing unsettles a bully more than the calm defiance of someone they cannot intimidate. Carl broke the moment by stepping closer, his voice firm. Ma'am, please, come with me outside. We need to continue this in private. It's not optional. His words were clear, a command disguised as courtesy. But Maria's phone caught every syllable, and the viewers reacted instantly. They're trying to take her out of view. Do not go with him. Stay where the cameras can see. Angela did not move, did not turn, simply stood rooted at the counter, her posture regal, her silence louder than any protest could have been. Ethan snapped again, his voice cracking under pressure. Fine. If she won't cooperate, we'll let the police handle it. Attempted fraud is a federal crime. She'll be arrested. This will be the end of her little show. His words carried bravado, but not conviction, and Maria whispered for her audience. He's threatening her with arrest. Listen to his tone. This is abuse of power. The viewer count surged past 1,500, then 2,000. As national activists and civil rights groups began to share the feed, Angela finally spoke again, her voice calm, deliberate, smooth. You've already made your choice, and I've already made mine. Nothing more, nothing less. Yet the weight of her words hung in the air like a bell tolling in a cathedral. Customers looked at one another, confused, uncertain, sensing that the balance of power was shifting, but not yet understanding how. Linda, rattled, slammed her hand down on the counter. Enough games. Corporate security has your name flagged. You are on fraud alert. We will not release any funds. This branch will not be fooled by your tricks. Angela simply tilted her head, almost as though she were studying Linda. Not as an adversary, but as a case study. A subject in an experiment who was revealing every flaw without realizing it. Ethan tore at the remaining scraps of the check, shredding them further, muttering under his breath. This is what happens when you mess with us. You don't get away with it here. Maria's camera zoomed closer, capturing his face twisted with spite, and the live stream comments went wild. This is evidence. Keep recording. They just destroyed her property. This is going straight to court. By now. Rebecca Kim was inside the lobby, her camera pointed straight at the unfolding chaos. Her producer feeding live footage to the station, preparing a breaking news segment. Derek Johnson, watching from his office across town, began drafting a legal statement, calling allies, preparing for immediate civil action. Angela stood silently, watching the storm build around her, her patience unbroken. She knew the value of silence. She knew that in every battle there comes a moment when the enemy defeats themselves. And she could feel that moment drawing closer with every tick of the clock. The digital clock on the wall blinked 3:24 in the afternoon. 6 minutes until closing, and still Linda pressed forward. "I am calling the police now. Attempted fraud is a felony. You will be detained until they arrive." She reached for the phone again, her fingers trembling slightly, her voice louder than necessary. The desperation obvious to anyone who cared to notice. Angela, however, remained serene, her presence commanding more authority with every passing second. Maria's viewer count soared past 3,000, comments pouring in from across the country, people pledging to call the bank's headquarters, to email executives, to alert the media. "We won't stay silent," one comment read. "Justice will be served." Another declared, "Inside the lobby." The customers who had once whispered with suspicion now looked uneasy, shifting uncomfortably, realizing they were witnessing something ugly, something historic, something that could not be undone. Angela's smile lingered, her eyes on the television as the promotional loop prepared to restart again. The same slogans, the same promises of dignity and respect, soon to collide with the harsh reality playing out beneath it. The clock ticked to 3:25 in the afternoon. 5 minutes until closing, and though none of the staff knew it yet, the countdown to their reckoning had already begun. A reckoning not only for Ethan and Linda and Carl, but for an entire institution about to face the truth of its own hypocrisy. The lobby had grown into a storm of tension, every second dragging like an eternity. When Angela Carter finally moved, not rushing, not flinching, but slowly, deliberately, as though every gesture was measured. For nearly 20 minutes she had stood in silence, enduring accusation after accusation, watching her check destroyed, her identification mocked, her dignity challenged. Now, her patience reached its end. She lifted her phone from the counter with calm hands, no trembling, no hesitation, and pressed a single button. Her voice, when it came, was low but firm, clear enough for every person in the marble lobby to hear. "Natalie, confirm Plan Delta, execute in full, no delays." "Yes, I authorize everything." The words fell into the room like stones dropped into water, sending ripples of unease across faces already stretched thin with suspicion. Ethan Blake froze, the scraps of the check still clenched between his fingers, his eyes widening at the calm certainty of her tone. He tried to laugh it off, though his voice cracked. "Don't be fooled. It's just an act. She's bluffing. It's all a show." But even as he spoke, sweat gleamed on his forehead, and his words sounded less like confidence and more like panic. Linda Harrington, the manager, folded her arms tighter, forcing steel into her voice. "Enough games. You are flagged on fraud alert. We are following corporate protocol. That's the end of it." Yet her words lacked conviction. She spoke like someone trying to reassure herself, not her audience. Behind Angela, Carl Donovan inched closer, his shadow stretching across the floor, his broad frame blocking any exit. His hand rested against his belt, his fingers grazing the handle of the taser with studied menace. He lowered his voice, trying to project authority. "Ma'am, let's continue this outside, away from the crowd. That's not optional." The threat was unmistakable. Yet before Angela could respond, Maria Lopez whispered urgently into her live stream. "They're trying to take her out of view. Don't let her go. Keep the cameras rolling." Thousands of people watching from their phones and laptops exploded with outrage, the comments flying in rapid bursts. "Stay visible. Record everything. They can't silence her." The viewer count shot past 4,000. Angela turned her head slightly, the barest glance toward Maria's phone, her eyes flashing with acknowledgement, then turned back again, serene, unbroken. That subtle look alone reassured the growing digital army outside that she was not alone, and that she understood the power of being seen. Ethan, desperate, thrust the laminated fraud chart into the air, his words tumbling out too fast. You see, this is textbook. Scammers learn the names of big companies. They fake alerts. They know exactly how to sound legitimate. That's what she's doing. That's all this is. But his voice had lost the steady arrogance from earlier. Now it was the voice of a man watching his story unravel, clinging to explanations no one believed. Angela let him speak. She had no need to interrupt. When she finally chose her moment, her words were surgical. She raised her chin, her voice cutting through the noise with perfect clarity. For the record, my name is Dr. Angela Carter, Chief Innovation Officer of Summit Technologies, Employee Identification CI 4738, Corporate Account Holder with First Union since 2016. I am documenting this incident of systematic discrimination for review by my company's leadership and for legal proceedings. The effect was electric. The customers gasped. Ethan's mouth opened, but no sound came. Linda's lips parted in disbelief. Carl's hand slipped from his belt, the authority in his posture collapsing under the weight of her revelation. And Maria's live stream, already surging, erupted into chaos, the comments screaming in capital letters. She's an executive. Oh my God. They just destroyed her check. They are done. The room shifted on its axis. Customers who had smirked moments earlier now looked pale and uneasy. A man in a fedora muttered, "Lord have mercy," under his breath. A woman clutched her daughter's hand tighter, whispering, "Watch this. Remember it." And Angela, serene, tapped her fingers once more on the granite counter, her rhythm deliberate, steady, almost ceremonial. She placed her phone flat on the counter, angled toward the security camera above, and said, "Let this record show that on October 11th, 2024, at First Union Bank, Madison Avenue branch, staff members Ethan Blake and Linda Harrington destroyed a legitimate settlement check and attempted to criminalize a black woman conducting lawful business." It was not anger in her voice, not even outrage. It was documentation, a statement of fact, an indictment spoken aloud for history to capture. Linda's face drained of color, her mouth opening as if to argue but no words forming. Ethan backed a step away, the pieces of the torn check trembling in his hand. Carl exhaled heavily, realizing too late that every movement, every word, had been recorded. Then the screen on the wall flickered. For a second, the bank's promotional loop froze on the smiling face of a family. Then it cut, abruptly, to breaking graphics. The room turned as one to stare at the television. The anchor's voice filled the air, calm but urgent. Breaking business news. Summit Technologies has completed its $2.7 billion acquisition of First Union Bank. The announcement was like a thunderclap. Silence fell so heavy that even the hum of the lights seemed loud. Ethan dropped the laminated chart. Linda stumbled back, her knees hitting the counter. Carl's jaw went slack, and Angela stood motionless, only the faintest trace of a smile touching her lips. The calm satisfaction of a woman who had waited for this exact moment. The anchor continued. Oversight of the integration will be led by Summit's Chief Innovation Officer, Dr. Angela Carter, who brings more than 2 decades of expertise in corporate transformation. Her professional headshot filled the screen. The same composed eyes, the same confident smile, the same woman standing at the counter now, watching her accusers dissolve before her. The silence lasted only a second before Linda's desk phone shrieked to life. She fumbled to answer, putting it on speaker by mistake, and the voice of Richard Cole, the regional director, roared into the room. "What in God's name is happening at your branch? I'm getting emergency calls from headquarters, from the press, from the board. Tell me this viral live stream is some kind of misunderstanding. But Richard's desperation only sealed the truth. The world outside already knew. Angela did not respond. She didn't need to. Her silence, her posture, the power of the moment said everything. She simply turned her eyes to the security camera above, as if to speak directly to every executive, every journalist, every viewer now bearing witness. The humiliation they had tried to bury was no longer a private incident. It was a public reckoning. The television in the lobby did not return to its usual smiling families or glossy slogans. It stayed frozen on the face of the anchor, delivering news that shifted the entire room's balance of power. Summit Technologies has finalized its historic $2.7 billion acquisition of First Union Bank, making it the largest technology-driven financial merger in the region. And the executive overseeing the integration is Dr. Angela Carter, Summit's Chief Innovation Officer. The words reverberated through the marble walls like a verdict, undeniable and final, and in that instant, every assumption, every insult, every suspicion hurled at Angela collapsed under the weight of truth. Customers gasped, some covering their mouths, others whispering apologies under their breath, while Linda Harrington gripped the edge of the counter for balance, her legs trembling. Ethan Blake stood frozen, still clutching the scraps of the check he had destroyed, the fragments that now served as proof not of fraud, but of his own reckless prejudice. Carl Donovan, the guard who had loomed behind Angela, stepped back in silence, his authority evaporating as he realized the woman he had tried to intimidate was now, in effect, his superior. Maria Lopez's live stream exploded with comments, the viewer count surging past 10,000 as screenshots of the broadcast were shared across social platforms, each caption more damning than the last. They tried to humiliate their new boss. Caught on camera, banking while black. History in real time. Rebecca Kim, the Channel 9 reporter, raised her microphone and whispered to her cameraman. "Stay with her. Don't cut. This is the story." While her producer patched the footage directly into the station's evening broadcast, Angela, however, did not move, did not gloat, did not even raise her voice. She simply let the truth hang in the air, her presence steady, her expression calm, the image of a woman who had prepared for this exact moment. The anchor's voice continued, adding another blow to those who had doubted her. As part of the acquisition, Dr. Carter has received a signing bonus of $62,500, a settlement check she had intended to deposit at a First Union branch earlier today. Every head in the lobby turned at once toward the scraps of paper in Ethan's trembling hand, the pieces he had so proudly ripped apart minutes before. And the realization struck like lightning. He had not exposed fraud. He had destroyed evidence of his own discrimination. His face drained of color, his lips stammering. I didn't know. I couldn't have known." But his excuses sounded hollow, meaningless, drowned out by the murmurs of the crowd and the furious stream of online comments that Maria's audience fed into the world. Linda tried to salvage something, anything, her voice breaking as she said, "We couldn't have recognized her. She didn't say who she was. No one told us." But Angela finally turned her gaze on her, calm and piercing, and said quietly, "Professional service should never depend on recognition. Respect is not earned through titles. It is owed to every human being who walks through these doors." The words cut deeper than any shout could have, and Linda's face collapsed as though she had been struck. Then, as if the moment needed no more irony, the bank's own promotional loop restarted on the massive wall-mounted screen, this time not with a smiling family or a slogan, but with the face of a teenage boy, confident, bright-eyed, speaking directly to the camera. "Hi, I'm Jordan Carter. First Union Bank helped my family achieve our dreams. With service built on dignity and respect, the entire lobby froze again, stunned into silence, as eyes darted from the screen to Angela, then back to the screen. The resemblance undeniable, the message devastating. Ethan nearly dropped the scraps of the check altogether, his hand trembling violently. Linda covered her mouth in horror. Carl whispered under his breath, "God help us," realizing the depth of their mistake. For this was not just a professional woman they had profiled, not just an executive with authority over their institution. It was also the mother of the very face they had chosen to represent their so-called commitment to diversity and inclusion. Maria's live stream audience erupted into chaos, comments flashing across the screen in capital letters. "That's her son. Their own campaign just exposed them. You can't make this up." And, "This is the most ironic downfall in banking history." The viewership leapt past 20,000 in a matter of seconds, the story spreading from New York to Los Angeles, from Houston to Chicago, a viral storm no corporate statement could contain. Angela remained still, watching her son's recorded words play out across the lobby. "My mom always told me that respect should be universal, and First Union understands that every customer deserves dignity." The irony was so sharp, it burned. Customers shifted uncomfortably, realizing they had witnessed the opposite of those values. While employees looked pale and broken, Angela did not need to say a word. The bank's own marketing was now her witness, her advocate, her proof. Ethan muttered desperately, "This can't be real. This can't be happening." But it was, and Maria's camera caught every second of his unraveling. Linda fumbled with the phone in her hand, still on speaker, as the panicked voice of Richard Cole, the regional director, filled the air. "Linda, what in God's name are you doing? Do you understand who she is? We've just been humiliated on live television. Every executive is calling me. This is a catastrophe." His words echoed through the lobby, and the last shred of Linda's authority disintegrated before everyone's eyes. Ethan dropped the scraps of the check onto the counter, his shoulders slumped, his head down, no longer the arrogant teller who had torn paper like a performance, but a man watching the ground disappear beneath him. Carl stepped back entirely, his posture no longer intimidating but apologetic. The swagger of a former cop erased by the knowledge that he had almost handcuffed his superior. Angela finally broke her silence, her voice smooth, steady, but filled with quiet force. "This check was my signing bonus for finalizing Summit's acquisition of this bank. I came here to deposit it before our board meeting tonight. Instead, I was profiled, humiliated, and threatened, not because of what I carried, but because of who I am." The lobby was so quiet that her words seemed to echo, each syllable carving itself into the marble, into memory, into the live stream now climbing past 30,000 viewers. Rebecca Kim whispered to her cameraman, "That's the quote. That's the line that will play tonight on every station in the country." And she was right. Angela paused, let the silence linger, then added, "Respect is not a privilege, it is a standard. And today, this bank has failed its own standard in the most public way imaginable." The statement was devastating, precise, undeniable. Linda covered her face with her hands. Ethan sank into his chair. Carl lowered his eyes to the floor. And Angela, tall and calm, stood like the very embodiment of justice delivered not with rage, but with truth. The television continued playing her son's testimonial, his young voice cheerful, innocent, now transformed into an indictment of the institution itself. First Union believes in treating every customer with dignity and respect. Those words, meant to sell accounts, now condemned the very staff who had acted with bias, their hypocrisy laid bare for the world. Maria's live stream crossed 40,000 viewers, hashtags trending nationwide, reporters flooding toward the branch, civil rights lawyers drafting statements. What had begun as an afternoon errand had become a turning point in banking history, a case study unfolding live, and every second of it captured, recorded, impossible to erase. Angela checked her watch, calm as ever, the faintest smile touching her lips. The reckoning was here, and it had only just begun. The ringing of Linda Harrington's desk phone did not stop. It buzzed and blared like an alarm for the entire branch, flashing with multiple incoming calls from headquarters, legal, and media relations. And when she finally answered, still on speaker, the voice of Regional Director Richard Cole filled the lobby with frantic authority. "Linda, tell me this is not real. Tell me the live stream that has gone viral with over 50,000 viewers is not happening in your branch. Because the CEO is on the line with me, the board is demanding answers, and every media outlet in the city is calling." His panic was audible, his breath short, and his words landed like blows. But the damage was already irreversible. Angela Carter waited for silence, then stepped forward calmly, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Mr. Cole, this is Dr. Carter. I can provide you with exact details of what has occurred. Your staff profiled me, destroyed my legitimate settlement check, humiliated me in front of customers, and attempted to intimidate me while I remained silent. All of it has been documented. All of it has been live-streamed. And now all of it will be reviewed at the board level." The clarity of her voice left no room for denial, no space for excuses. And the customers who had once whispered doubt now looked at her with quiet awe. Maria Lopez's live-stream comments lit up. "She's in charge now. Listen to her voice." "This is history," Richard Cole stammered. "Dr. Carter, I had no idea you were in that branch today. I deeply apologize on behalf of First Union. This behavior does not represent our values." But Angela stopped him with a raised hand, her voice steady. "That is precisely the problem. Mr. Cole, professional service should never depend on recognition. It should never depend on knowing who a customer is, or what title they carry. Dignity should be the standard for everyone. Every time. Without exception." Her words rolled through the marble lobby like a sermon. Undeniable, heavy with truth. And customers shifted uncomfortably as they realized how deeply they had witnessed a betrayal of that standard. Richard's voice cracked. "Dr. Carter, what can we do? How do we fix this?" His desperation filled the room, exposing the imbalance of power more clearly than any revelation could. Angela glanced briefly at her watch, then back at the phone, her tone precise. "There are two options. Option A, comprehensive reform, immediate policy overhaul, mandatory training, digital monitoring, and a public commitment to change. Option B, Summit Technologies withdraws from this acquisition, walks away from the table, and takes its investments elsewhere. For us, the financial loss would be manageable. For First Union, it would be catastrophic. 3,000 jobs gone, 47 branches closed, shareholder value destroyed, and the bank's name buried under the weight of its own prejudice." Her ultimatum landed like thunder. The customers gasped. Linda gripped the desk, her face pale. Ethan Blake finally dropped the scraps of the check to the floor, his eyes wide with disbelief. Carl Donovan's hands hung limp at his sides, the swagger of intimidation replaced with the slump of shame. On the phone, Richard Cole's voice was barely more than a whisper. "Dr. Carter, we will comply with every recommendation. Whatever resources you require, you have them. Just, please, help us correct this." Angela nodded slightly, her voice cool but firm. "Very well. Then hear the requirements clearly, effective immediately. Ethan Blake is terminated, Linda Harrington is terminated. Carl Donovan is suspended pending review. This is non-negotiable." The words fell like sentences handed down by a judge, and Carl visibly flinched as Linda gasped, her hands shaking, her lips trembling as she tried to argue. "Dr. Carter, please. I've given this bank 18 years. I was only following protocol. I can't." But Angela cut her off with calm finality. "You destroyed trust in less than 18 minutes, and you did it willingly, with arrogance and disdain. Years of service do not excuse bias. You are relieved of duty." Linda's knees buckled, and she collapsed into her chair, burying her face in her hands as the customers watched. Richard's voice came back, stronger now. "Done. Dr. Carter, their files will be closed before the day is over. What else?" Angela straightened, her presence radiating authority. "Next, a full external diversity audit of every branch, conducted by independent consultants. Mandatory monthly anti-bias training for all employees, with measurable accountability metrics, real-time customer service monitoring, with digital feedback integrated directly into employee performance reviews. And finally, a contribution of $750,000 to local civil rights organizations. A demonstration that this bank understands that discrimination damages not just individuals, but entire communities." The room was silent except for the sound of typing on Richard's end of the line. His voice strained. "Yes, every single one of those measures will be implemented. I will authorize the budget immediately." Angela folded her hands, her voice unwavering. "See that you do, because this is not about me, and it is not about today. This is about ensuring no customer who looks like me, no mother, no father, no child, will ever be treated this way in your bank again." The live stream comments roared in support. "That's how you lead. She's changing the system. This is justice in action." Rebecca Kim whispered to her cameraman. "She's rewriting corporate policy in real time, and we are watching history unfold." Customers in the lobby began clapping softly, hesitantly at first, then stronger, as they realized they were witnessing not just the humiliation of a few staff, but the rebirth of a broken institution under the hand of someone who had turned pain into power. Ethan sank lower into his seat, his face red with shame, while Linda sobbed quietly, muttering to herself, "My daughter. What will I tell my daughter?" Words that landed heavy but powerless, because the consequences were already sealed. Carl lowered his eyes, his voice low. "Dr. Carter, I'm sorry. I should have known better." Angela looked at him, not with anger but with cool detachment. "Apology is the beginning of change, not the end. Prove it with your actions." The digital clock on the wall ticked to 3:35 in the afternoon. 20 minutes passed the moment this ordeal began, and the marble lobby that had once been a stage for humiliation was now a courtroom, a classroom, and a boardroom all at once. With Angela Carter presiding over every corner, Maria Lopez's live stream passed 60,000 viewers, the hashtags trending nationwide, news alerts flashing across phones from coast to coast. What had started as a teller ripping up a check had become a corporate reckoning broadcast live to the world. Angela glanced once more at her watch, her voice calm, measured, final. "I expect written confirmation of these reforms before our 5 o'clock board meeting. If I do not have them, option B will proceed." And with that, she stepped back, her silence more powerful than any further argument, because everyone in that lobby, and everyone watching around the country, knew the future of First Union Bank no longer rested in its old managers, but in the hands of the woman they had tried to dismiss, and who had instead redefined what leadership looked like. 6 months later. The marble lobby of First Union Bank looked nothing like the stage of humiliation it once was. The screens that had once displayed hollow slogans now ran live accountability dashboards, showing real customer feedback in real time, every positive review and every complaint visible for all to see. The respect and dignity protocol, born out of Angela Carter's ultimatum, had become company policy across all 47 branches. backed by Summit Technologies' digital infrastructure. Customers who once whispered mistrust now walked through the doors with confidence, knowing that their voices could not be silenced or ignored. Employees, old and new, were retrained under rigorous anti-bias programs, with monthly evaluations tied directly to their ability to treat each customer with fairness. The reforms weren't just cosmetic, they were systemic, and the difference was felt in every interaction. Angela had not stopped at policy. She oversaw the rollout of a $75,000 community reinvestment initiative, directing funds into local civil rights organizations, youth programs, and financial literacy workshops for underserved neighborhoods. The bank's name, once trending in disgrace, now appeared in news stories as a case study in how an institution could fall and rise again under pressure. Harvard Business School published a paper titled The Carter Method, examining how strategic patience and institutional leverage had turned a moment of prejudice into a blueprint for reform, for those who had tried to stand in her way. The consequences were lasting. Ethan Blake found himself unemployable in mainstream banking, his arrogance preserved forever in Maria Lopez's viral video. He ended up at a small credit union, earning barely enough to pay rent, living with the daily reminder that one act of prejudice had ended the career he once believed untouchable. Linda Harrington relocated to another state, her resignation made public, her name tied forever to one of the most infamous incidents of workplace discrimination. She struggled not just with unemployment, but with the heavier burden of her teenage daughter's shame. The girl, once proud of her mother's management position, wrote college essays about family disgrace, about learning to face mistakes head-on, and though painful, it earned her admission to a top university with a focus on social justice. Carl Donovan, the security guard, fared better. He accepted suspension, attended the training programs voluntarily, and months later returned to work in a different branch, humbled, changed, determined to treat customers with humanity. In his own words, captured in a follow-up news story, he admitted, "I thought I was protecting the bank, but really, I was helping destroy it. Dr. Carter gave me a second chance, and I won't waste it." Maria Lopez became something of a folk hero in her own right. The live stream she had captured grew into a digital platform where she taught others how to record injustice safely, how to protect themselves with evidence, and how to transform individual pain into collective action. Her catchphrase, "Your phone might be someone's lifeline to justice," became a mantra repeated across social media, and civil rights groups began distributing guides based on her work. Reporters like Rebecca Kim built entire segments around the story, calling it the most important banking reckoning of the decade. Even the federal government took notice, citing the reforms at First Union as a model in hearings about systemic discrimination in financial institutions. As for Angela, she never bragged, never turned her ordeal into a personal victory lap. She treated it as a case study, a responsibility, a duty to ensure no one else would endure what she had endured. At board meetings, she spoke firmly about accountability, reminding executives that integrity was not negotiable. At community forums, she appeared not in designer suits but in simple blouses, speaking to parents, teachers, and children about the importance of dignity. And at home, when her son Jordan asked why she never shouted, never lashed out in anger that day, she placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Because anger fades, but strategy endures. If I had lost control, they would have called me emotional. Instead, I gave them no choice but to change." Jordan carried those words into his own life, becoming a youth advocate, speaking in schools about justice, courage, and the importance of using intelligence over rage. His face, once an ironic symbol on the bank's billboard, became a hopeful one, representing the new era his mother had ushered in. The bank's profits grew in the months after reform. Customer satisfaction ratings hit historic highs, and shareholders who once feared collapse found themselves praising Angela's vision. but beyond the numbers, beyond the headlines. The most profound change was felt in the quiet interactions that never made the news. A young Latina mother opening her first savings account without fear of being dismissed. An elderly black man greeted with respect instead of suspicion. A teenager offered financial advice without condescension. Each of those moments was the real victory, the living proof that dignity, once enforced, could ripple outward into lives and communities. Angela's ordeal had started with a torn check, a public humiliation, and an act of arrogance meant to break her spirit. Instead, it had ended with an institution rebuilt, a community strengthened, and a legacy secured. In the end, she did not just change a bank, she changed the rules by which justice is measured in America, proving that sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination is not raised voices or clenched fists, but calm precision, steady resolve, and the unshakable belief that respect is not optional. It is the minimum we owe each other. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from.